We still have a quorum?
We do.
Okay. Welcome to the Planning Commission, November 2nd meeting. First on is call to order and followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Luke, if you would do the roll call, please.
Pearson.
Here.
Willenbring. Here. Campbell is absent. Stolarski.
Here.
McCauley. Here. Diata is not going to be here tonight, and Hagan is also not going to be here tonight.
Thank you. Reviewing the minutes from October 5th. Anyone have any corrections or additions to them?
I wasn't here, so.
Okay.
You recuse yourself?
See, and was I here? I don't remember. No, October 5th I wasn't. I move for I need a motion for someone to
Move to
accept.
approve.
I wasn't here, so I can't.
Oh, so moved?
Yeah.
Sorry.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? They are approved as presented. Old business, none. So the first one is the public hearing for the Marlys Center for Early Education at 1470 Helmo Avenue, the site plan and planned unit development amendment. Luke, report?
Yes, thank you, and we'll have this here on the screen in just a moment. The location of the site is 1470 Helmo Avenue. We'll have a new access off the west side of Helmo, and the purpose is to establish an early education center. And in terms of age range for these students, we're talking daycare, preschool age students. The zoning of the site is North Star Mini Storage PUD, planned unit development, which allows the proposed use. Some background details on this one. The education center would serve approximately 162 students and employ 23 full-time workers. The developer describes the center as being focused on character education, service projects, and entrepreneurship. Property details include that this is a 1.2 acre vacant site. It's surrounded by other commercial uses. Immediately to the north is a vacant parcel, and then a little bit further north is the TLC vet clinic. Here is a look at the site plan. Again, we're on the west side of Helmo Avenue. There will be a new access that's shared between this site and the vacant parcel to the north. The developer will need to create an easement for the shared access. So something worth noting is that there is a northbound left turn lane that will serve this site. Northbound left turn lane off Helmo Avenue. So moving from the east to the west of the site in terms of describing what's going on here, the parking area will parallel Helmo Avenue, and the city's zoning regulations require 60 parking spaces for this unit, and that's based on square footage. The building size is approximately 12,000 square feet. And the developer is requesting a PUD amendment to reduce the parking requirement from 60 to 37 spaces. So originally, when the developer met with the city with this proposal, there was only going to be 25 spaces, and staff has been working with the developer to increase that number. So now they are up to 37 spaces. The developer provided a parking study and justification for the request, which is included in the packet. Staff is amenable to the deviation, given that child drop-off and pickup times are relatively short, and staff parking will be somewhat staggered. You can see the number 1 there on the image. That is a courtyard with bicycle parking. Number 2 is an outdoor play area, and that will be fenced in. And number 3 is a exterior trash enclosure. And then the building itself is outlined in red, so it's an L-shaped building. Any questions on the site plan before I keep moving on?
Where's the access for fire department? Is that through the access into the driveway?
In terms of being for like a fire truck?
Yeah.
Yep, so it would be through this new access here, and then just the drive lane here. So.
And that'd be the same for the garbage pickup, I'm assuming, too.
That's correct. And there is a turning radius for the garbage pickup that the developer shows that there's sufficient ingress, egress for the truck to make that turning movement here.
Okay.
Any other questions?
But don't show any drop-off loading area, it's all parking spaces. Does everybody park when they bring their kids in? Or do they drive up like a school and leave them off at the front door? Do you know that?
I'll defer to the applicant once we open the public hearing
Okay.
for that. They'll have more detail on that. Any other questions? Okay. So this next slide is the proposed landscaping plan, and it does meet the zoning requirements. So the developer will install 27 trees throughout the property, and there will also be shrubs and ground cover plantings around the building and the parking lot. The developer will need to provide additional details showing screening of exterior utilities and equipment. The developer will also have to update their photometric plan just to ensure compliance with the city's site lighting requirements. In their plan, there was just a portion of the southern property line that exceeded the foot candle requirement. For stormwater management, the developer is proposing an underground system here where my cursor is. And for that system, the developer will need to work with the watershed district to ensure that stormwater provisions are appropriate. The developer will also need to obtain approval from the fire department for the location of hydrants and fire department connections. So here's a look at the exterior renderings of the building. So the top image is the east elevation, so that is fronting Helmo Avenue. Next one down is the west elevation that faces the North Star Mini Storage Building. The third image there is the southern elevation, which faces existing buildings, or excuse me, existing businesses. And the fourth elevation there is the north side facing the vacant lot and the TLC Vet Clinic. So the zoning ordinance contains standards for exterior designs, standards for commercial buildings. They must be comprised of at least 70% Class 1 materials, which are, for example, brick, stone, and glass. The proposed design does not meet this requirement. However, the developer is requesting a deviation from the standards. So while the design does not meet the exterior standards, the developer has updated their site plan, including this rendering here, to show that the east elevation of the building will consist of 72% Class 1 material, so slightly exceeding that requirement. And that will consist of brick, glass, and aluminum accents. So, and the north, south, and west facades will not meet the Class 1 material requirements because they will be consisting of a majority of what's considered Class 2 materials, so fiber cement, EIFS, exterior insulation finishing systems. However, the north and south elevations, they will have limited visibility from the public right-of-way, and then the west elevation that just faces the mini storage facility. So given these factors, and that Helmo Avenue runs north-south, drivers and pedestrians are mainly going to see the east elevation. Sorry, I lost my place here. Yep. Oh, and in the developer's narrative, they also noted that the use of fiber cement panels will emulate cut stone, and that this material and EIFS will have a lower environmental impact when they're manufactured compared to bricks. So staff finds that the requested deviation to the exterior design standards is appropriate. And just a note on another deviation that the developer is requesting, it's for fencing. Looking at the original ordinance for the PUD for this area, there is a provision that all fencing be wrought iron, with the exception of internal and the right-of-way fence along I-694. So the developer is requesting just to be able to have some flexibility from not using wrought iron. That provision is a little unclear, so their request is just to allow the alternative fencing materials, which staff is supportive of. So staff recommends approval of both the PUD amendment and the site plan request, subject to certain conditions, and I will summarize the conditions in the site plan resolution. So number one, approval of an amendment to the PUD to allow deviations for the building materials, fence materials, and reduced parking spaces. Number two, execution of a development agreement. Number three, permits and approvals obtained from the watershed district. Number four, approval of the site civil construction plans by the city engineer. Number five, approval from the fire department for the hydrant locations and fire department connections. Number 6, the photometric plan be revised to meet the city's site lighting requirements. Number 7, execution of an easement for the shared access serving 1470 and 1480 Helmo Avenue. And finally, number 8, the developer provide an updated site plan that shows all proposed rooftop and ground mechanical equipment and methods of screening. For a reminder, this is a public hearing. The applicant is here in attendance if you have questions, and I'd be happy to answer other questions. Thank you.
Anyone have any questions for Luke?
No.
And at this time, I open the public, offer the time for the applicant to make comments if they wish.
Hi, thank you. I can answer the question that was raised before about the drop-off. So because the kids are very little, we require parents to actually walk them inside just for safety purposes. And so they park and then bring their child in and then leave. And that's what the parking study reflected, was that exact situation, those times, childcare setting, where they're parking, bringing the child in to the classroom and then leaving.
I would assume it's also for security. You check the kid in, so.
Exactly.
Right person's taking them.
Exactly, yes. They have to check, they have to sign their child in, and for infants, they have to complete the paperwork of like when they ate last and had diaper change last, so.
I know the shoulder, there is no shoulder on that road. It's just basically two-lane road. There's no gap between traffic and turning in. How many people are you gonna potentially have queued up to get to one of those parking places? Because I know at another school we have in town, Eagle Point, during drop-off time, you can't drive through there because people are using the road to park and wait to queue to drop their kids off.
Sure. So I think the parking study is the best reference for that. So this, to share, I guess, a little bit of perspective, most of our centers have less than 10 parking spaces. This will be the most that isn't in like a strip mall, I guess you could say. And we haven't seen that at any center. We haven't seen those sorts of issues. That was actually a concern that was brought up, particularly with our Hiawatha location, because it's right on Minnehaha, which is a pretty, trafficked road, busy road in Minneapolis. And the neighborhood, like, there are some concerns and stuff, but they've found since we've opened, it's been 3 years now, that because families, especially now more than ever, drop off between several hours, and the average time on site is, just a few minutes, it's relatively fast. They're not there long, and so it doesn't result in the queuing, especially when this will have so many parking spaces.
Any other questions?
How tall is the fence? I'm okay with it being not wrought iron, but the new fence, how tall is that?
We could do 4 feet.
4 feet?
It's either 4 feet or 6.
Yeah, we do, it depends on the city. So what we're proposing is Trex. Wrought iron has gaps in it, and
I'm
yeah.
okay with that. It's the height, because your elevation doesn't show the fence as a view.
Sure.
So I was just wondering, because a new hospital down the street is a big 6-foot white fence. It stands out.
Oh, sure. We were thinking 4 feet,
Okay.
because then families can see when they are coming up. And
Perfect. I assume brown to match
yes,
the building?
yeah,
Good.
yep, yeah. We have a sample. It's called woodland brown. I think it's listed in there.
All right, good. Thank you.
Just as a point of information, had you not made a change from wrought iron fence to your wooden type fence, I would have had a concern because of children getting caught in the fence.
Yes. Yes. One center, Minneapolis, had that requirement, and we did, a picket style fencing, and we just have had a lot of issues with kids, leaning into it, throwing toys out at it, and it's just become like a safety hazard.
Anyone else have questions?
No.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much.
Anything else you'd like to present, of course?
Anything? Thank you.
All right.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
I wasn't sure if the public hearing was open or not.
open, so now,
Okay.
no, it's not open, now I will open it.
Okay, all right, thank
I
you.
almost did, but by mistake before. So I open the public hearing for any comment from the public. If there is anyone here who wishes to make comment, please come forward. Seeing none, I'll make it one more time. If there's anyone here who wishes to come forward to make public comment, please do. Seeing none, I close the public hearing. Bring it back. Any final comments from anyone?
No.
Then I look for a motion to recommend approval of the PUD amendment and site plan for the Marlys Center for Early Education.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much. Motion passes. Next is a public hearing on the proposed Shoreline Overlay Zoning District Ordinance. Luke?
Yes, thank you. So this is a very technical topic that I will try to be very concise with. State law requires that cities with shoreland property to adopt regulations to protect those areas. And the definition of shoreland, according to the DNR, is that it is property within 1,000 feet of the ordinary high water level of public water bodies. So this is the high water level is where habitat changes from mainly being aquatic to land-based. And there are 3 public water bodies in Oakdale, and the term public water bodies is something that's defined by the DNR. And they include Tanner's Lake to the south, Armstrong, just the south portion of that lake on the east side of Oakdale, and then the north part of the town is Mud Lake. If the if a city has not adopted shoreland regulations, then the state, the DNR, they maintain control of these areas through their model ordinance. The model ordinance contains very strict regulations that make development difficult because their main goal is to protect those shoreland areas. It's very sensitive habitat and just overall sensitive environmental features there. So to accommodate development, and specifically what we're talking about here is the city-owned Tanner's Lake site, which is on the west side of Tanner's Lake. The city has been working very closely with the DNR since late 2022 to develop a shoreland ordinance. So this process has taken a while because there's been a lot of back and forth negotiations between the city and the DNR when developing those regulations and providing some flexibility to their standards. So by working with the DNR, the city has been able to negotiate reduced setback standards from the high water level, which is critical for development, and again, particularly at the city-owned Tanner's Lake site, while still protecting the water feature. And setbacks are less problematic for other shoreline properties throughout the city because the areas around the 3 lakes are nearly fully built out. And adopting shoreland regulations would create only just a handful of legal non-conforming properties throughout the city. And essentially what we're talking about here is regulations for the lots that abut those public properties, or excuse me, public lakes. You might know them as riparian properties. So under the proposed shoreland ordinance, which is in the agenda packet, the setbacks from the 3 lakes are as follows. So Tanner's Lake, the proposed setback is 50 feet, and that is consistent with the DNR's model ordinance. Armstrong South portion is also 50 feet instead of the required 150 feet. And then Mud Lake is proposed to be 50 feet instead of the required 75 feet setback. So the one exception to the setback requirements is the city-owned Tanner's Lake site and a couple adjacent parcels there. What we've done is create a special district for that area, so we call it the Tanner's Lake Redevelopment District, and we would allow a 30-foot setback from the high water level, and there would also be an option to be up to just 25 feet setback, based on setback averaging. If you have structures on either side of a property, then you could potentially average out and be up to 25 feet. So this ordinance is necessary to facilitate the development at the property, the city-owned Tanner's Lake property, given its narrow width and also the presence of some power lines on the west portion of that site. So in exchange for the reduced setbacks, the DNR is requiring certain provisions, including vegetative restoration, impervious surface limits for this special district. Also, beaches and private boat parking or mooring spaces would also be prohibited there. So the big takeaway here is that the city would essentially obtain local control over its shoreland by adopting an ordinance, and we also comply with state requirements. The DNR issued conditional approval of the draft shoreland ordinance. And that occurred on October 23rd. So in addition to holding the required public hearing for this request tonight, staff is requesting support from the Planning Commission for the draft ordinance. And the next steps would involve bringing the ordinance to the City Council on November 28th. Then we would actually have to resubmit the ordinance back to the DNR for final approval after that. And I'd be happy to answer questions that you have.
I guess I got questions about this Tanner's Lake redevelopment district is just on the west side there. It's over where, on the west side, and you're saying you're only wanting to do that. So does this impact on the other portions of Tanner's Lake, or is this just going to, are you actually making a specific just area for this 30-foot?
Yes, so the reduced setbacks, the 30-foot setback applies only to the city-owned parcels on the west side of Tanner's Lake and a couple other privately owned parcels there. And that's being requested in order to accommodate the development. Now, the other properties around Tanner's Lake, they would fall under that 50-foot setback requirement.
Right.
Except ones that have been grandfathered in as they've been built out right now.
That's correct. There's very few vacant
There's
parcels.
There's 3 vacant parcels on there right now. And there's one that's actually, they're building on it as we speak.
That's
they're
right,
going
yeah.
through all the stuff that has to be done. So, but you're just trying to get it to where it's just 30 feet on the west side of, you're sectioning this off, and that's why you're making it just for the city, for this 30-foot
Exactly,
trying to do.
because otherwise development would not be feasible there.
Right. What are your plans there? Are you planning on putting housing there? Are you putting restaurants, or are you with your, I mean, I guess I don't understand the theory behind the 30 feet. Or I understand there's not a lot of space, but their rules here are saying that it has to be for, for personal use and also. So I'm just wondering what the plan was for this development.
So the city is working with a prospective developer. We've entered into an exclusive rights agreement to build potentially, a mixture of housing there. I don't know if I'm looking to our city council liaison to how much detail I can go into here just with that exclusive rights agreement, but nothing is official at this point in terms of.
I mean, I feel like the DNR is the one steering the ship, not the city. That's kind of the impression. You've articulated to us more than once that should I come up here and probably?
Sure.
Sorry, yeah, and it kind of seems to me like the DNR is the one steering the ship on this. That's the impression I've gotten. I know that the city wants one thing, including staff, and the DNR is consistently pushing back. Would that be a correct way to?
That's fair.
Yeah, so, we've gotten occasional updates, but nobody's really come out point blank and asked the council yet, what do you think? Because really, for some reason, the DNR, the hierarchy, DNR's above us when it comes to this stuff.
Well, it's a state thing, yeah.
Well, but they're not elected officials. That's
Right,
the.
but it's a state thing, that
Yeah.
this is for every lake in the state of Minnesota.
Yeah, no, and that's understood.
Right.
But and I guess I shouldn't air my personal grievances with how government works here, but no, nobody's approached us and said, city council, what do you want? So we haven't had an opportunity
That
yet.
wasn't the question. His question was, should you tell us who's going to be, what you're planning on doing?
Oh, as far as that goes, I've heard nothing. There's been no conversation
I'm
whatsoever.
assuming this would be the third, or is it the fourth attempt at trying to redevelop for person to come in and have had problems with finalizing the
On the
decisions.
west side of Tanner.
Oh, and are you talking specifically the parcel next to the hotel there? Is that?
Yes, that's what, well, he's talking the west side of the parcels are on the west side.
Yeah,
And he's saying a couple of others that are personal, that are, so,
Okay, and I misunderstood the question. I'm sorry. I thought it was, what does the council think of the setback? And
no.
yeah,
we're
no, I'm
talking
sorry.
about
Okay.
Trying to find,
Yeah.
I asked the
No,
question.
the parcel next to the live-in there, it's gonna be like apartments, townhomes, correct? That's the latest.
Yep, that's the latest concept that we've seen.
Yep,
so.
yep. And I think that there were multiple options from a couple of different developers, and we kind of provided feedback on which one we would prefer, and that's what's being looked
Well,
at
and
now.
this has to do with it too, because the DNR has the power on it, because it is,
Yep.
it is a lake.
Yeah, and Lee, when we have been getting updates, it's been as a result of that specific development.
And that's what we're here
Yeah.
for, is for the proposal.
Yeah,
is to find out, what they are proposing, and then we bring it to you and say, well, it works for us, and then you give it to the DNR.
That's correct.
And-
Yeah.
And that's what we're doing here today.
I would assume in your discussions with the DNR, you've already talked about these 50-foot things, and they're probably on board with it?
It took about 11 months, but yes.
yeah.
Gotta
And
give 'em
Lee, I
something to give
apologize,
it
I
to 'em, too.
completely misunderstood the question there as far as,
I'm assuming it was brought up to the DNR that the previous occupant of 2/3 of that west side was Lakeside Inn, became Blackie's, and that had a 0-foot setback because they actually had a balcony that hung over the water
Well,
at
that's
that
what the
point.
big-
But
Yeah, that was
the
nice.
building's gone, so I'm assuming that made
yeah, I
no
don't think that,
impact on them.
I don't think that'd fly again.
No, we brought that point up to the DNR, so they're well
They're well aware of it, okay.
yes.
Does this affect the Hudson Road on the south side of Tanner's, since that's butted right up against the lake? There's no 50 feet in there between the lake and the
It would be-
road.
It would be grandfathered in by the clauses in here.
Right.
What if they rip it up? I mean,
You're allowed, the statement is you're allowed to, you can't go deeper, but you can go in the direction of the shoreline, you can go wider or higher, but you can't go closer to the lake and you can't go deeper.
I think you'd destroy the gold line
Right.
if they brought up an issue then, so I wouldn't anticipate, you had some competing interests there. But, and yeah, I misunderstood the question. But yeah, that site next to Livin, right now they're looking at multifamily and rentals. And I think the current development that's being proposed is kind of eyed at long-term rentals for 3Mers. Does that sound right?
That's consistent with what I've heard.
Yeah, okay. And I'm going off memory, which isn't always my best way of doing it, so. But yeah,
Yeah, as a negotiation, the details are still a little bit fluid with a prospective developer.
yep. And are they still under the exclusive? Or is that expired?
I believe so.
Okay,
That's what his question was. He said, that's why he was asking you.
Yep.
'cause they are under exclusive, apparently.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I wasn't sure when it expired,
Yeah.
or if it had expired, so.
So one more question, you're talking about the sewage treatment systems and that type of thing. There are 3, that's on page 2 in the city ordinances on the sewage treatment systems and the Minnesota rules. There's runoff ponds, one behind McDonald's. There's one on 7th Street by where the horseshoe things are, and then there's one up by the, there's one up by the parking spaces by the park. It's kind of, and those are runoffs, and then it has a big, like a floor drain, and when it rains, all the green stuff that comes down goes into the lake. Now, I'm sure the DNR, I know the DNR is aware of that. They study that and they keep an eye on that and everything. And the one behind McDonald's, they treat it and you guys don't, because we get a lot of green stuff on the lake and when it rains. And that it's causing a lot of growth, in the lake itself. So will that be addressed too at a later date, or you're just trying to get a blanket thing just so you can get this thing going, basically?
I don't know that this ordinance would be the tool, the right tool to address that issue. This is more about new housing, new redevelopment opportunities. There is some provisions about, sanitary,
Sewage treatment systems,
right,
right?
sanitary provisions. And really, the provisions are about being connected to the city sanitary system as opposed to like a septic system. I think.
Right, but then the runoff, and then, like I said, that's what that's all about, is about the runoff from
I
all the
think
other
these are just
houses.
definitions for the
Right,
ordinance,
this is just a blanket thing. What you're doing tonight is just for the blanket, to just try to get your things to the DNR so you can start working with these people to get the west side of Tanner's Lake developed.
Yes, that's correct.
I don't
Any
know
other
if,
questions?
yeah, I don't know if we bring this up or if it's taken care of, but there is a typo in the exemption area on page 1 of ordinance 912. It says, but that is no in conformity. It should be that is not in conformity.
Yeah, no problem fixing that up, so, thank you.
DNR is going to drive this, not city, so.
Well, this provides a little bit of demarcation between
Yeah.
who has control over what issues.
But as long as it sounds like you guys got something to work out, you gave something, you got something. So I think that's what it's going to be.
And you'll have the commissioner, it mentions a commissioner. Now, would that be of the city or would that be of the DNR? And that's on page 2. Right, under it says,
Oh.
the building line, the controlled access lot, the commissioner of the Department of Natural Resources. So will there be a commissioner from the city that works with that one in particular also?
No, not in that
Not
context.
Context, okay.
If there's adjustments to this ordinance, future amendments to this ordinance, then we have to submit it to, the DNR, the commissioner. We have our contacts there, and I think it's just
So
a
there
formality.
actually is a commissioner for the DNR,
Correct.
okay.
Any other? At that point, I should open the public meeting. Open a public hearing for the proposed Shoreland Overlay Zoning District Ordinance. Is anyone in the audience who wishes to make comment, please come forward. If there are none, I will only offer it once more. If there's anyone in attendance who wishes to make comment, please come forward. Seeing none, I close public hearing. Any final comments from the commissioners? Luke, anything final from you?
No?
Then I guess I would look for a motion to recommend approval of the ordinance amendment to Chapter 25 zoning, adding Article 26 Shoreline Overlay Zoning District.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much. Motion passes. Luke, any planning development update?
So in terms of a December Planning Commission meeting, that's to be determined. Our submittal date is next week, so nothing received at this time, so I'm not sure if we'll have a meeting next month. That's all I have.
Okay. City Council member, Councilmember Ingebrigtson.
I've probably said a little more than I should have already tonight, but I'll answer any questions. Anything?
I guess we have nothing for you. Thank you for coming.
All right.
And for adjournment.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We stand adjourned.